Hello and welcome to this podcast on the English and Welsh legal system with Ryan Murphy. Today we are going to be talking about the vexed issue of technology and the law, and technology and the legal system of the future. Now, that's a pretty ambitious thing to get down in 20 minutes or so. And so instead of giving a detailed treatment of the law as it applies to technology and technology as it applies to law and the modernisation of the legal system, I'm just going to highlight certain key themes to you that are of relevance to somebody who's studying the legal system of England and Wales, and to highlight how this term law tech or legal tech has found a particular niche at the moment, a particular prevalence at the moment, and perhaps how you can unpick some of this in your exploration of the legal system of England and Wales. So let's give some context first. You know, the rise of new technology is not something that is new. It is not something that is confined to the 21st century. And so things have changed quite significantly in terms of technology, whether that's, going back far enough to the advent of the printing press, or development of computerized record keeping, or the development of legal databases, of online case reporting, of all of these things. The fact that the law and the legal system has had to react to technological change is nothing new. And once the current wave of technological advances have passed, there will be another wave, I'm sure, close on the heels. And so whilst we talk about a future of the legal system, there is always a future to the legal system. There is always a consideration of how technology impacts not only on law and the legal system, but also on legal practice and on those who are responsible for the delivery of legal services. The current conversation is very much around disruptive technology and technology that will disrupt legal service provision, allowing for greater competition, for new forms of legal practice, or at least new forms of ways of doing things within legal practice, and how technology can facilitate those sorts of development. And what you will quickly become aware of if you do any level of study around law tech, legal tech, law and technology, innovation law, whatever you want to call it, is that it comes with its own terminology. And some of these terms are difficult to grapple with, and it's not the intention of this podcast to give you definitions of those terms, but just to say that everybody struggles when new terminology comes around. So you may have heard, what even do we mean by this term, legal tech? People use that term in different ways. Some people use it to describe how will the law go about regulating some of the technological challenges of the future. The more mainstream view of legal tech at the moment is that it's about how technology changes the way in which law is practiced. That there is this Internet of Things, so the fact that my fridge can connect to the internet, or my coffee machine can ask Google questions, or whatever, that devices and things now are becoming more and more interconnected. And what are some of the challenges that come about from this concept, the Internet of Things? That machine learning, that machines can improve themselves through refinement of their own codes and algorithms. Through practice, they can find more efficient ways of doing things. And what are some of the challenges, legal, political, socio-economical, moral, and philosophical? What are some of those challenges that come about from the advent and increase of machine learning? What if machines learn, and they learn to do things that are unlawful? Who is liable for machine learning when it goes wrong? So, for example, and it's an example that comes from a speech I'm going to going to direct you to in a moment, but for example, if you have a piece of recruitment software that constantly refines its own algorithms to provide better outcomes, and it ends up just putting forward and shortlisting male candidates. How should the law deal with those sorts of issues? That one of the big areas of the challenges of law and technology come around how that then applies and how AI applies, artificial intelligence applies to things like autonomous vehicles. So when vehicles are driving themselves, who holds liability for when things go wrong? The challenge is presented by the storing, gathering and processing of big data sets. And so that can happen in some forms in document automation within law firms. So many thousands of files can be read, sorted and analysed by algorithms rather than by humans. And what are some of the challenges that arise from that application of technology to law? How far could we take AI and machine learning in terms of adjudication? So is it ever acceptable to replace human adjudication in the form of the judiciary, so judges with computers? What about the advent of robo-judge? What are some of the challenges that might come across from that? Can machines, if machines can predict outcomes more accurately than humans, is there a case for robo-judge? Or do you always need a human judge because the law is a human construct? And actually, one of the things that machine learning would be very poor at doing would be for challenging existing law. It could predict the outcome of legal problems based on the current law, but how would you then push forward law reform through the courts, for example? And some of these challenges of technology and law were discussed by Lord Hodge, the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, in a speech given in March 2020. And the web link is on the screen now. And I would really encourage you to go away and read what was a very thoughtful speech, and one which encouraged but laid down warning signs about the use of technology in the administration of justice in England and Wales. So what I wanted to spend the rest of the time talking about was three aspects of technology and the law. What I'm terming the law of technology, and then we'll go on to talk about the technology of law, and then we'll go on to talk about technology in the legal system. And I hope by doing that you get a more rounded picture of some of the technological challenges that face the law and some of the opportunities that arise from the increase of use of technology and the law. So one of the areas that is no stranger to the concept of the impact of technology on the law is that of intellectual property. So intellectual property in new ways of doing things, intellectual property in code that refines itself, intellectual property in new sorts of data sets. All of those are challenges that the law is having to come to terms with as technology continues to advance. There are all sorts of questions about data retention, about the processing and keeping of large sets of data, and the increased capacity for data to be mined from non-traditional sources, and how should the law tackle this? So these things are about how the law is seeking to govern technological advances. How will the law regulate some of these big technology challenges in the future? The distributed ledger technology of blockchain is one that is much in public consciousness at the moment. So the ability to have tamper-resistant, stable data capture and the ability to create chains of data that can't be interfered with very easily, so sort of crypto technology. And that leads on to all sorts of possibility. What might be the impact? How would the law go about regulating smart contracts, self-regulating contracts, self-executing contracts that don't actually rely upon human interference, human interaction in order to be processed? What about the application of things like blockchain to property law and particularly land registration, where a stable authoritative ledger that could be provided by something like blockchain would be of particular use. What about the regulation of new forms of currency? Things like cryptocurrencies, things like Bitcoin and Elysium and all of these other forms of cryptocurrency, where they are largely untraceable. That transactions are very, very, very difficult to reverse once they've been made. Everybody in the chain, in the blockchain, has to agree to the alteration of data on the ledger. What might be some of the challenges that come around from this sort of cryptocurrency? And how does all of this play into things like organized crime? How might organized criminals, organized gangs, high-level organized crime be facilitated by some of this blockchain technology? And how is the law expected to keep in advance of and ahead of some of these challenges? And that leads into bigger questions about the use of artificial intelligence. I've touched upon some of this already when I've talked about things like machine learning and the prospect of autonomous vehicles. Exactly who is liable when the software in an autonomous vehicle breaks down and there is a crash? Is it the driver? Is it the code writer? Is it the manufacturer? All of these are questions about how the law keeps up with, catches up with technological advancement. And some of this stuff is very, very difficult for courts to do. So because courts often, the role of courts in lawmaking, as we know, is to fill the gaps in the law. If there is no law regulating these things, is it right for the courts to step in and provide legal solutions to these problems, particularly when lots of them have deep policy implications that we would normally expect to be left to a legislature? And then the second aspect I wanted to talk to you about was law tech and legal practice. And the thing I wanted to talk to you in particular is that lots of people see law tech, the application of technology solutions to the provision of legal services, as something of a revolution in legal service provision. Some people see it as hugely and massively disruptive of legal service provision. It threatens the place of lawyers in the law, and particularly of certain roles within traditional legal firms. Or is this something that will be more of an evolution? That over time we will see these technologies advance. We still don't have a stable form of smart contracting, for example. We still don't have a completely stable form of document automation. And so to what extent will this cause a revolution in legal practice, or in what extent will this just be part of a journey, the constant refinement of business practices within law firms? So is this a threat to existence? So for example, if document automation can do the work of 10 paralegals working full-time in a matter of minutes, what does that mean for entry into the profession through particular routes? Or does this actually lead to the development of new roles for lawyers? And so there are two aspects to this. What challenges does it face to those, particularly at the start of their career? The impact on the availability of training contracts, of routes into the legal sector. And equally, what types of new role types, what sorts of new jobs in the law do these technologies provide? So there are those who work in innovation law now and who work in law tech. There are legal technicians, there are legal engineers who are working on new ways of working, trying to develop, refine and improve this software. And so there are different ways in which positive and negative that legal tech and law tech has on the profession. So what new opportunities does it provide to firms to streamline processes, to change some of their back-end functions, to improve and to reinforce their relationships with clients, like finding new clients, new sorts of clients with new legal problems. And so whilst it's often painted as a threat to the existence of the work of some lawyers in some law firms, it also provides great opportunity for those in legal practice to innovate and do new things. And as a student of a legal system, it might be worth you reflecting on how can you best upskill yourself to be ready and useful to the law firm of the future. That this sort of law tech has a fundamental impact on the way in which providers of legal service operate. It changes the way in which they're organising themselves internally. You have some units that are predominantly focused on this sort of legal innovation. That how do these sorts of technologies free up lawyer time to spend more time on interacting with clients? How does it facilitate the better servicing of client need? And equally, law firms can become, particularly larger ones, they can become hubs of innovation. So you get these legal technology incubators buried deep, or not so deep, within some of the large firms, where they are there to support startups. They are there to support the development of this technology that will revolutionize or lead to the evolution of legal practice in England and Wales. So those are two of the 3 points I wanted to cover. There's the law of technology, there is the technology of law, and now there's technology in the legal system. And the court system of England and Wales, in some ways, is a creaking, monolithic, pre-Victorian institution. You know, you have court buildings that are falling down, you have buckets in corridors, you have creaking IT systems, you have an awful lot of paper flowing around the system. But equally at the same time, you have aspects of the legal system of England and Wales, which is at the forefront of technological advancement. And there is a significant government move, or has been a significant government move, and move coming from within the judiciary, in particular from successive Lord Chief Justices, to modernise the court system. What does the court system of the future look like, and how does that impact on the administration of justice in England and Wales? So already there's the development and use of technology to facilitate online dispute resolution at a distance, not in front of a mediator, initially over the phone, and more technological solutions are being put forward to facilitate the resolution of dispute without people having to come to the court. The rise of online courts and online claims, so you can make money claims now in the county court using an online portal rather than filing paper copies. I mean, the truth of the matter is that your online submission then gets printed out, and the paper still flows around the system, but at least from a user experience, at least from someone who's entering into this sort of dispute, they have an online way of resolving their disputes. And actually, sometimes crises push things forward massively. So the coronavirus pandemic of 2020 has already started to push forward the way in which courts use technology with online and remote hearings, with the facility and the legal framework enabling witnesses to give evidence other than in person in court. And so you will have this constant push within the legal system as well to harness and make better use of technology. And again, as I've said, not only online courts like the online money service, but also online hearings. So this is something I touched upon already about, you're not having to actually be present for the court business. And that already happens in certain areas. Privy Council, lawyers from around the Commonwealth can beam in, or from the British Overseas Territory can beam into hearings of the Privy Council. They don't have to make their way to the Supreme Court building in London anymore. And so that's what I wanted to really talk to you about, was to consider this nebulous broad term of technology and law, of law tech, of legal tech, of innovation law, and to really ground it in three streams for you to think about. One is, what are the regulatory legal challenges that come about from the advancement in technology? How does the law govern these new forms of technology? The second is, how does the legal service providers, solicitors and barristers, but primarily solicitors, harness that technology to change the way in which they work and to change the face and shape of legal service provision in England and Wales? And finally, how does the legal system, particularly the court system, deal with and react to some of the challenges and opportunities provided by technology in terms of online courts, etc. So I hope you find that potted, piecemeal wander through some of the issues quite useful in prompting you to think about how you might best make use of this new burgeoning concept of law and technology to your best advantage, either as you plan your career, as you go about your studies, or as it informs your understanding of the legal system more generally. So thank you very much indeed for listening, and I will see you, or you will hear from me on the next podcast entry. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.